The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of this network, their group, or other organization they may be involved with.
I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of Tuesday evening news. Tuesday evening
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Psychedelic Reporters for this Tuesday, the 6th episode of 156 here on NOK Network, the video news podcast focus on psychedelic medicine being reported. Mainstream media. Shout out to the guys in Dead Ringer from Kirkland Lake, Ontario for the awesome intro track originally recorded by the Blues. Customize some changes for our show. I am joined by my amazing joint host, Tara Simpson, along with the one and only Bufo Furious, who has chosen all of our stories for us. Hello, Tara.
Well, hello, hobbies, and hello, everyone. I'd like to take a minute to introduce Bufo. He's our Sonoran desert toad, or Colorado mud toad. Did you know he emits DMT from his skin? And well, that sounds like great fun. Park rangers would like to remind everyone, please don't lick the toad.
Don't lick the toad. There's proper ways and safe ways to get your DMT medicational needs. Please seek them out first before touching toads.
Absolutely. I agree. Sustainable harvesting. Safe highs.
So, speaking about picking wild things, jumping right into these articles, we got out of University, California, San Francisco, US or UCSF.edu, how magic mushrooms can help Parkinson's disease patients. A UCSF pilot study finds psilocybin therapy surprises showing meaningful improvements in mood, cognition, and motor symptoms. And this is written by Victoria Cullen. So freaking awesome.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting research study. I scanned through it just prior to the show, and I'm blown away because Parkinson's patients suffer, and a lot of the medications that are currently available don't really necessarily control their symptoms, which is why, these things are going to be so important. So psilocybin, a natural compound found in certain mushrooms, has shown promise in treating depression and anxiety. UC San Francisco researchers wanted to know if it could help be used to help Parkinson's patients who often experience debilitating mood dysfunction in addition to their motor symptoms and don't respond well to antidepressants or other medications. The results were surprising. Not only did participants tolerate the drug without serious side effects or worsening symptoms, which is what the pilot study was designed to test, they also experienced clinically significant improvements in mood, cognition, and motor function that lasted for weeks after the drugs were out of their system. It is the first time a psychedelic has been tested on patients with any neurodegenerative disease. We are still in the very early stages of this work, but This first study went well beyond what we expected, and the paper's first author, Ellen Bradley, MD, assistant professor and associate director of UCSF, Transitional Psychedelic Research Program. Many people don't realize this, but mood symptoms in Parkinson's are linked to a faster physical decline, she said, and they are actually a stronger predictor of a patient's quality of life with Parkinson's than their motor symptoms. Researchers in the TRPR program within UCSF's Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences and the Department of Neurology teamed up to lead this project, which was funded by an anonymous donor. The findings appeared online earlier this month in Neuropsychopharmacology, a Nature publication.
Okay, psilocybin's lasting mood and motor effects. Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurodegenerative disorder characterized by uncontrolled movements due to abnormal brain activity, affects about 1 million Americans. While medications like levodopa can relieve symptoms, there are no approved therapies to slow the progression or reverse the disease itself. Common early physical symptoms include tremors and foot dragging, but Bradley said anxiety and depression in patients with no history of psychiatric problems often precede the onset of motor symptoms by several years. It's unclear why standard medications often don't work well for these patients, but mood changes could be part of the neurodegenerative disease process. To test the safety of psilocybin for these patients, the researchers gave 7 men and 5 women with mild to moderate Parkinson's disease a 10 milligram dose, followed 2 weeks later by a higher dose of 25 milligrams. The patients completed psychotherapy sessions before and after the psilocybin, 8 sessions in total, and were evaluated for changes in mood, cognition, and motor functions. While nearly all participants experienced some adverse events while on the psilocybin, such as anxiety, nausea, and elevated blood pressure, these were not serious enough to require medical intervention. The participants had meaningful improvements in their mood, cognition, and motor symptoms at both their 1 week and 1 month follow-up appointments. The team evaluated the participants' mood again 3 months after their psilocybin sessions and found it was still significantly improved. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, eh? The researchers suggest a variety of explanations for the improvements. The beneficial impact of psilocybin on a patient's mood could have led to better cognition and motor function. For people, for example, people feel better, and that in turn helps them socialize and become more active, both key elements of Parkinson's treatment. Another theory is that psilocybin could provide relief from multiple symptoms of the disease by reducing inflammation and promoting neuroplasticity, the growth and reconnection of brain cells involved in mood, cognition, and movement regulation. An expansion into uncharted territory. The results of this pilot study were promising enough that researchers are conducting a larger randomized controlled trial at UCSF's, enrolling a larger and more diverse group of patients. The second study incorporates non-invasive brain stimulation, neuroimaging, and other tools to understand how psilocybin impacts inflammation and neuroplasticity. It will include a second site at Yale University with the aim of enrolling 100 participants. This work will be funded by the same anonymous donor that paid for the safety pilot, as well as by the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. The vast majority of brain diseases still lack interventions that change the course of illness, said the study's senior author Joshua Woolley, MD, PhD, associate professor at UCSF, and director of the TRPR program. We can often treat the symptoms, but we don't alter the trajectory or prevent decline. Now that's beginning to change. These results raise the exciting possibility that psilocybin may help the brain repair itself. That's a really freaking wicked awesome article.
I enjoyed the fact that they covered Michael J. Fox in that. And if anybody
Right.
grew up in the 80s, has known that in the 90s, he was very vocal in the Parkinson's disease research. And it just kept on growing from there.
Yeah, I have no doubt that anonymous donor was probably him. He just doesn't want the credit, right?
Right. And you know, he's been struggling and fighting this for years, right? So, I mean, if they come out with a research program using psychedelics, I mean, it's obviously if his program is funding it, they're on board, you know. And didn't we read something that they were trying to seclude that cancer guy down here in LSU? Like he was trying to get that psychedelic for cancer. And so this is almost in the same principle, not using it for the trippy part, but using it for the tissues and the pain healings.
Right. And the mental relief that it brings people, right? That's huge, especially with, dealing with cancer diagnosis or any long-term terminal illness. Antidepressants don't seem to help those people, but we know plenty of patients here at the network that have benefited from the use of psychedelics as therapy, not because they want to get high, but because they want to, die with dignity and die with, peace of mind. So it's definitely been beneficial.
Well, it's been so beneficial that our next article comes out of Denver7.com, and it says a stroke inspires a Denver man to become licensed psilocybin facilitator. And this is by Amy Waits. Wow, man, this is so awesome.
Yeah, after using psychedelic mushrooms to heal from a stroke, a Denver man is studying to become a psilocybin facilitator so he can help others. Voters approved the legislation of certain psychedelic, or the legalization of certain psychedelic mushrooms in November 2022. Colorado is the second state after Oregon to launch a psychedelic therapy program. The state began accepting applications from those wanting to provide psychedelic therapy services on December 31st of 2024. Such services can only be administered in healing centers. Jake McWink suffered a skiing accident in 2019. 1 week after the accident, he was in Hong Kong when he suffered a stroke at the age of 29. Doctors determined that McWink tore part of his vertebral artery during the skiing accident, which led to the stroke. It ended up kicking off my whole right side as well as impacting my speech, and it took a while to get back to the United States. By the time we were able to get back here, there wasn't necessarily a whole lot doctors were able to do, McWink said. McWink said speech, occupational, and physical therapy weren't enough, so he turned to psychedelic mushrooms. Each time I did something new after the stroke or something I had always done, it felt like I had to relearn it from the very beginning. And so psychedelics seemed to help improve that process, McWink said. McWink recently finished training to become a licensed psilocybin facilitator, which will allow him to work with clients at a healing center. His journey inspired him to give back to others. They did an absolutely exceptional job at blending the kind of ceremonial wisdom with Western knowledge in a very hands-on, practical approach, McWink said. Wow.
Yeah, according to the Colorado's Department of Regulatory Agencies, DORA, which licenses and regulates facilitators of natural medicine services, there are two kinds of licenses. The facilitator license allows someone with a clinical license to provide psychedelic care, while the clinical facilitator license allows someone who is already licensed to practice medicine or psychotherapy to work with, oh, whoa, where'd it go? Oh, to work with natural medicines such as psilocybin. Both licenses require 150 hours of classroom style training and 80 hours of observation and hands on training. According to the state, 130 people have received their facilitator license, and this is a whole state, and will eventually be able to work at a healing center. I'm training to become a clinically licensed facilitator, and a whatever for that is already having a professional clinical degree through the state of Colorado, said Brandon Sklar. Dr. Brandon Sklar is a psychiatrist at Rose Neurospinal Tree, which eventually became the Rose Healing Center once the facility gets its license. He's hoping his healing center will be up and running by the summer and will utilize two rooms in the facility to provide psychedelic therapy. Wow.
Very cool. However, not everyone supports such practices. My biggest concern is for patient safety, said Luke Niferatos with the Foundation for Drug Policy Solutions. These products are not FDA regulated. Niferatos believes that required training is not enough. They're going through only 150 hours of training in order to get their license to facilitate psilocybin use here versus a clinical professional here that we would come to expect, like a doctor, that may spend thousands of hours plus and 8+ years in school and residency, said Neferatos. Tassia Pointsiti, director of the Healing Advocacy Fund, believes psilocybin should only be used in regulated environments. I knew that was coming. It's naturally occurring in mushrooms, and it's non-toxic, and it's generally seen to be non-addictive, so safe for most people. But that being said, there are certain people that should definitely take precautions and speak with their doctor before using psilocybin, said Pointseit. McWink believes psilocybin changed his life, and he can't wait to give back. I would not be here today without it, said McWink. I am thankful to report back that I'm skiing and taking my life in a more meaningful direction than ever. According to the Colorado's Department of Revenue's Natural Medicine Division, as of April 25th, the state has approved licenses for 1 standard healing center and 4 micro centers. An application for a testing facility is pending. Until safe testing facility is licensed, healing centers cannot obtain the one thing at the heart of their business, the mushrooms. The Healing Advocacy Fund believes healing centers should open to the public later this month. Wow.
With no mushrooms.
With no mushrooms, yeah. Yeah, and again, kudos to them for actually doing the testing on the mushrooms in the state in order to use them as medicine at the healing centers. I think that that's really important, not because I'm like big on, let's regulate the hell out of everything, but it gives the healing center personnel access to important information so that they're not giving too much to their patients or too little. The whole idea is for it to be therapeutic and beneficial. And if, we're not doing our due diligence with testing and knowing what we're giving them and how strong that strain is out of each batch, because we know that can vary batch to batch, then, we could be doing harm that we're not intending to do. So good for them for requiring these mushrooms to be tested at a minimum, right?
Right.
That's fantastic. So hopefully that center gets approved soon so that they can open all their other centers and actually have mushrooms.
Yeah. Well, in that, a lot of states fight with that, how to safely put it out. And in fact, so much that they hear the concern of their constituents wanting to use it for medication, that brings us to our next article, where in Connecticut, and this is off of the Courant.com, Hartford Courant, and proposed Connecticut law would decriminalize possession of certain amount of magic mushrooms and what to know. And this, wow, those are so beautiful. And this is a staff report.
Yeah. A bill before the Connecticut legislature would decriminalize possession of certain amounts of a substance known as a psychedelic drug. The bill refers to psilocybin, often called magic mushrooms or hallucinogenic mushrooms, and it would reduce the penalty for illegally possessing less than half an ounce of psilocybin from a crime that carries a possible prison term to a fine of $150 for first offense, according to the report by State Office of Legislative Research. The bill was approved by the Judiciary Committee in a 29-12 vote, and it has been referred to the House calendar. The measure brought a number of indications of support, but also opposition, records show. The ACLU-CT testimony, for example, said that the organization fully supports the bill, but recognizes that they are only beginning steps towards reckoning with the vast general harm of drug prohibition. No person should be persecuted or remain in prison for drug-related crimes, nor, as is the case with cannabis, should any person be burdened with a criminal history for the use of a now decriminalized drug. The ACLU-CT urges this committee to support House Bill 7065 and other legislation that to end the failed war on drugs and erase records of all cannabis convictions. Erin Doolittle, whose testimony identified her as a trauma therapist and director of education who has done a great deal of research and advocacy for plant medicine over 20 years, writes that in the course of the past 5 to 6 years, I have had the privilege to study and learn about the tremendous benefit of psilocybin mushrooms for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, various addictions, major depressive disorder, OCD, and anxiety disorders. Put simply, taking a large dose of psilocybin is akin to decades of therapy in about 4 hours. With the proper intention and guidance, in many cases, one experience is all that's necessary for an individual to get what they need in a way that truly internalizes whatever shift in perception, beliefs, and lived experience is necessary for them to be able to move forward with their lives, Doolittle wrote. Wow, that's a lot.
It is. And however, Joe Josiah Shalee, who identified himself in testimony as a cannabis advocate, wrote that they do not support this bill or the attention to this topic at this time. Wrong time, wrong place. We need to address the continued arrest of cannabis users using vague and unfair qualifications. According to the online drug facts site, psilocybin or magic mushrooms are naturally occurring and are consumed for their hallucinogenic effects. The site noted they are psychedelic drugs, which means they cannot affect all the senses, altering a person's thinking, which means they can affect all the senses, altering a person's thinking, sense of time, and emotions. Psychedelics can cause a person to hallucinate, seeing or hearing things that do not exist or are distorted. The Office of Legislative Research report also noted the bill would bring a $200 to $500 fine for a subsequent offense. But the report also notes that the bill does not define psilocybin. It is a chemical compound contained from certain types of hallucinogenic mushrooms. Under the bill, people fined for this possession must follow the procedures set by law for infractions. For example, they can pay the fine by mail without making a court appearance. But the bill provides a lower burden of proof than is generally required for infractions or other violations that follow infraction procedures. It requires a law enforcement officer who issues a complaint for this violation to seize the psilocybin and have it destroyed as contraband, according to the law, the report notes. Further, the bill would prohibit minors under age 18 from being adjudicated delinquent for a first or second offense of possessing less than a half of an ounce of psilocybin, the report notes. Currently, because possession is a crime, minors aged 10 and older may be adjudicated delinquent for possession of any amount under existing law. 16 and 17-year-olds may not be adjudicated delinquent for non-criminal violations. The bill requires a 60-day suspension of the driver's license of anyone under the age of 21 who is convicted of a violation under the bill. It also eliminates criminal penalties for specified actions involving a drug paraphernalia relating to half an ounce of psilocybin, the report notes. The Office of Fiscal Analysts report says the bill reduces the penalty for possession of small amounts of psilocybin and other psilocybin associated items, which results in potential savings to the Department of Correction and the Judicial Department for incarceration or probation, and a potential revenue loss to the general fund from fines. On average, the marginal cost to the state for incarcerated an offender for the year is $33,000.02. Just one offender. Wow. While the average marginal cost for supervision in the community is less than $6,000 each year for adults and $400 or $450 each year by juveniles. Wow.
Wow.
Man, it's interesting to see the decriminal laws coming up, and like, I don't know how that really does, because that they come back in like a year and say, oh, we have illegal mushrooms on our street.
Yeah. Kind of hard to, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. My thing is if you're going to put out a program, put out a safe program so you can't bitch about it later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And oh, my bad. But it is medication time.
That's right, folks. It is time to pay some bills. So stay tuned for a word from some of our sponsors, and then we'll return with more articles Bufo has chosen making mainstream media news.
Back in 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network.
Hi, my name is John Mark, aka Sublimator Warrior, and I would like to welcome you to Smoke Signal in Tyndinaga.
One dab make your whole dome drip sweat. One dab make the homies all dip set. One dab, only really need one dab. One dab.
Smoke Signal is a medical dispensary where you can get all your products and needs.
Start vaping a whole bunch. Might just start laying up the blunts. God. Ooey, ooey, gooey, that's a sticky dab. Sticky dab. Might just have to put this one on Instagram. Go and hold it in, feel it in your ribs.
So come and check us out in Tyndinaga. 55 Highway 49 in Tyndinaga. It's on the res, and we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Are you a Northern Ontario resident searching for credible information on cannabis as a medicine? No Sir is here to help. Established in 2013, Northern Ontario Cannabis Education and Resources is here for you. No Sir Director Kim Cooper brings you 45 plus years experience utilizing cannabis as a medicine, and she is spreading that education across the North. Activism, referrals, resources, and more at No Sir. Don't be a jackass. Say no, sir, to propaganda with No Sir. Find them at www.nocer.ca.
Advertising space available at NOK. Contact us for a rate sheet at NOKNetwork.com.
Dudes and dudettes, enjoy the show, man.
And we're back from our medication session live on Psychedelic Reporters here on NOK Network.
And we have another set of stories coming at you from the realm of psychedelic medicine. So let's get at it. All right, our first article comes right out of Colorado, our fourth comes out of ColoradoPolitics.com. And this is Colorado lawmakers tackle bill to collect data on psilocybin program. And this is written by Marissa Ventrelli.
Yeah, Colorado lawmakers are considering legislation that could charge the state health agency to collect data and information on the health effects of state psilocybin programs, which is set to launch this summer. Under the bill, the Department of Health and Environment and the Department of Revenue and the Department of Regulatory Agencies would be required to collect information and data on the use of psilocybin, including negative health impacts, impacts on healthcare facilities, law enforcement incidents, and consumer protection claims against facilitators. Data collection efforts would be funded by gifts, grants, and donations from nonprofits and academic institutions, and all data will be stripped of any identifying information for security and privacy purposes. Voters approved Colorado's program in 2022 through a ballot initiative known as Proposition 122, which legalized psilocybin use in licensed therapeutic settings. The initiative also decriminalized the possession, growing, and selling of psilocybin for individuals 21 and older. Colorado is only the second state after Oregon to legalize the use of psilocybin in therapeutic settings. The recreational use of psilocybin remains illegal in Colorado. Research has found that psilocybin can be an effective treatment for a number of mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The health agency, along with the regulatory affairs and revenue departments, have spent nearly 3 years mapping out all the framework for the program, releasing a final draft in late 2024. Critics of psilocybin, meanwhile, insist that the substance is linked to suicide and accidental deaths, as well as associated with psychosis. Critics have also been pushing for strict oversight, arguing it's necessary because psychedelics are being promoted and normalized on social media in the same way marijuana has been for the past decade. Well, yeah, because we know it works. Just saying.
Yeah, since the passage of Proposition 122, lawmakers have passed legislation recreating for collaboration between CDPHE, DORA, and CDOR, and clarifying the authority and responsibilities of each department. The next step is laying the groundwork for data collection. The bill sponsor, Senator Matt Ball, which is a Democrat, Denver, regardless of how you voted on Proposition 122. I think we can all agree that it is as we roll out something somewhat novel in this state, it's important that we collect health data so that we can evaluate what the impacts are of our natural medicine program. He told the state Senate Health and Human Services last month. The measure also requires the state health agency to create a database for the information collected and gives the governor authority to grant pardons to the individuals who have been convicted of possession of psilocybin. According to Ball, it would apply fewer than 20 people. Scott Bookman, the director of Public Health Readiness and Response at CDPHE, the tasks outlined in the bill align with the department's mission to collect and share public health information. The data will only be valuable to Colorado citizens, but academic researchers as well, he said. It is important to make this information available to the public. Understanding the health effects of natural medicine is crucial because these products are only legal at the state level. So here there's no federal regulation and limited research to rely on, he added. Wow.
Yeah, Natasha Poinsettia of the Healing Advocacy Fund called the bill a groundbreaking step towards expanding access to psychedelic therapy for adults with mental health conditions. She said data collection is necessary in order to ensure the program's long-term success and to maintain the best experience for patients. These insights will help regulators and healing centers improve care, adapt to challenges, and ensure movement towards affordable access. She said this kind of outcome tracking is a proven standard in healthcare and is critical to earning public trust. As other states look to Colorado's leadership, a framework for participation and outcome will be essential to inform the future of psychedelic policy. The bill passed on a 7-2 vote in committee with the support of every Democrat plus Republican Senator Scott Bright of Platteville. Senator Elisa Frizzle, Republican of Castle Rock, took issue with the fact that the data collection would be entirely funded through gifts, grants, and donations, potentially by public universities. It's not okay to get around our budgetary issues by passing the funding off to publicly funded institutions, whether it's an academic institution or some other organization. She said, I think that that's a problem. It is sponsored in the House by a Republican or Representative Lisa Ferret, Democrat, or Varda. So they don't like that it's being publicly funded. They want only certain types of funding. Like, how does that make a difference? Funding's funding. The research is being done because someone gave them money. It doesn't skew the data, I wouldn't think, if they're doing it right. But I don't know.
Well, maybe they feel they can be picky on who helps them do a research.
Yeah, it's silly, eh? Yeah.
Well, as we jump over to San Diego, we come to 10news.com, and they say, can a psychedelic drug help heal the brain? And this is written by Olivia Gonzalez Brett for KGTV in San Diego.
Yeah. So can a psychedelic drug help cure depression, addiction, and even strokes? At UC San Diego, scientists are putting the idea to the test. They are focusing on DMT, a powerful psychedelic that our bodies already make in tiny amounts. But at the Center for Psychedelic Research, it's not the first time they've studied how a psychedelic could benefit the human mind. We established a track record on how to conduct this safely. Director of DMT Research Divisions at UCSD, John Dean, said, as rates of depression, addiction, and chronic pain climb, these scientists say solutions are needed. There is no cure for those. Neuroscience director at UCSD's Center of Psychedelic Research, Fidel Zadian, says, what we are doing now is starting to study a spectrum of different psychedelic medicines, including DMT, to see if these therapies, these ancient natural products, can significantly reduce depression and improve well-being. DMT has been used for centuries, and now UCSD researchers are using modern science to explore its healing potential. It has been used traditionally in indigenous cultures for spiritual purposes and for supporting overall health and mental health for centuries, Dean says. Now nearly $2 million donation is helping them test what happens when they stretch the DMT trip. Wow, that's neat.
It is. Can we go another? I got high.
Yeah, the idea here is that we can make these windows last upwards of 60 minutes, opposed to the 10 to 15 minutes known to predict health outcomes like alleviation of depression. 20 healthy volunteers will get a dose of DMT and lie in an MRI scanner for an hour while researchers watch their brain activity in real time. Well, that's neat, but I don't know that, those things are loud. I don't know how, peaceful that would be to have a trip in an MRI machine, but that's kind of neat.
It is kind of neat. And well, we're scanning people's brains under the influence of DMT. We're expecting several things to happen across the cortex and below the cortex, as Zidane says. It's part of what these scientists call a psychedelic renaissance, but they're moving carefully, determined to build treatments that stand the test of time. We want to make sure we do the work in the most safe, careful, and focused fashion so that we can make the work that we publish timeless, as Zidane says. Their lab hopes to start recruiting participants this fall, with 20 people expected to participate in the groundwork and study. However, Zidane's lab is currently looking for participants to take part in their phenomenal limb pain study, and that's to learn more. Click on the little clinky link there. I volunteered to take some DMT, and I had slide myself in an MRI machine and hear for just so I can
right. I don't know how that would affect somebody on DMT. I've never done DMT specifically myself. I know our director and producer here at NOK, Kim, has. But again, she's always done it in a right set and setting, right? So I don't know how that would have affected her trip if they had stuck her in an MRI machine, but maybe she'll be up for the task someday. 60-minute DMT trip in an MRI machine. Sounds kind of fun.
It does, and you might think that it's drums after a while, and I don't know, man. But our last article is a very, very interesting one, and I'm glad Bufo picked this because it's drugs, psychedelic drugs are not fully legal. And so we still get those articles as well. And this comes from militarytimes.com. And I always love when they cover psychedelics because our military is looking at it. And Army pilot claims he distributed LSD for religious reasons by Stephen Losey. And so great article.
Yeah. So it's interesting for sure. An Army Black Hawk pilot who was indicted by a grand jury for allegedly distributing LSD argued in court he has the religious right to consume the psychedelic drug as sacrament and sells it on the dark web. Federal prosecutors accused First Lieutenant Kyle Norton Reister of conspiring with others to distribute 10 grams or more of LSD, according to an indictment filed April 24th by the U.S. District Court for the East District of Virginia. In their own lawsuit, Reisler's attorneys acknowledged he distributed LSD online, but countered that he did so in a sacramental form and only to other individuals who used it for religious reasons. Reister and his attorneys are attempting to fight his prosecution on religious freedom grounds. They sued unsuccessfully to receive an emergency injunction that aimed to block the government from indicting him. In the lawsuit, Reister's attorney said that he sincerely held belief that LSD is a sacrament which allows him to communicate with God and is necessary for his continued spiritual growth and development. He also believes Bitcoin to be sacred, the lawsuit said, because it allows him to distribute allegedly sacramental LSD to others who share his belief. The case turns a spotlight on the entheogenic movement, the adherents of which use psychoactive substances like hallucinogenic mushrooms, ayahuasca, or other psychedelics as part of religious rituals to achieve meditative or spiritual state.
Growing concerns about LSD. The federal government classified LSD as a Schedule I drug, meaning the substance is not recognized as serving an accepted medical use and is labeled as having a high potential for abuse. The government has in recent years conducted studies on the potential therapeutic uses of other drugs such as MDMA. LSD is barred in the military. It was once rare enough among troops that in 2006, the Pentagon's former top counter-narcotics official cut testing for it from the Defense Department's standard drug testing panel. In a memo announcing the change at the time, former defense official Richard Douglas said that over a 3-year period, only 4 drug tests out of 2 million, more than 2 million, had tested positive for LSD. But over the past decade, a series of embarrassing incidents involving LSD prompted the Pentagon to pay more attention to service members' illicit use of the drug. In 2016, security forces airmen at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, whose jobs entailed guarding nuclear missiles, were busted for buying, distributing, and using LSD and other drugs. 6 airmen were ultimately court-martialed, and another 8 were disciplined in other ways. 4 years later, following the revelation of a drug program among some Marines, the Defense Department authorized commanders to once again test troops for LSD. Wow.
Wow, eh? Religious sacrament or dangerous drug. Reister alleges in his lawsuit that the federal government violated his rights under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act by raiding his home last August, issuing him a reprimand, ordering him to cooperate with federal law enforcement, and attempting to prosecute him for alleged conspiracy to distribute LSD. The suit was filed April 3rd against multiple Defense Department and federal government officials. A district court judge in Alexandria, Virginia, rejected those arguments April 23rd, clearing the way for federal prosecutors to indict him. The Washington Post, which first reported the case, said prosecutors alleged in the April 23rd hearing that Reisler sent almost 1,800 shipments of LSD to purchasers online and collected almost $122,000 from the sales. The judge at the hearing denied his request for an injunction to prevent his prosecution, the Washington Post reported, and said that even if his spiritual beliefs on the consumption of LSD were genuine, it is far from clear that sincere religious belief would extend to the indiscriminate selling of LSD on the dark web. Army spokesperson Chris Sundridge said Reisler has been reassigned to administrative duties pending his discharge and does not have access to classified material. He said the Army could not provide further information due to privacy constraints. Reisler's attorney said he never piloted helicopters while under the influence of LSD. They argued the government's actions were causing ongoing irreparable harm to his religious exercise, conscience, and reputation by forcing him to stop his religious practices and potentially ending his military career with a dishonorable discharge. Reisler had asked the court to declare a permanent injunction on the government, preventing it from arresting, prosecuting, or threatening him or his wife for acquiring and possessing LSD and distributing it to those who share his faith for ceremonial purposes. His wife, also a Black Hawk pilot, had no knowledge of Reisler's LSD-related activities, his lawyers wrote in the lawsuit. Reisler also wanted the court to order the government to allow him to use and dispense LSD to those who share his faith. After the judge denied those requests, Reisler's attorney, George Lake, told Military Times that Reisler plans to appeal the judge's decision in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Wow.
Yeah, turning to psychedelics, the lawsuit that Reister, who grew up as a non-religious household in Vermont, first took LSD in 2017 while attending Indiana University's Kelley School of Business under an Army ROTC scholarship. That sacramental experience was deeply religious and mystical in nature, the lawsuit said, allowing him direct communion with his creator. He continued to sacramentally consume LSD, the suit said. Those experiences, ranging from between 8 to 12 hours, helped him reach religious and mystical states and allowed him to consult divine forces and entities which guide and instruct him on how to live in accordance with his higher spiritual self and higher spiritual path. Today, Lake said Reister regularly attends a non-denominational Christian church. Lake described Reister's religion as a syncretic blend of Christianity and entheogenic psychedelic use. Through his adult life, he continued the spiritual journey in college, going to ceremonies with mushroom, ayahuasca. These things, Lake said, and then just kind of naturally evolved him into LSD, which he found was preferred and best method for the communion with conception of God. But during COVID-19 lockdowns, the suit became difficult for Reister and others who share his beliefs to gather in person to practice their religion. The pandemic also caused stress and isolation, and said, so Reister and his religious community moved online. Reister felt compelled, in accordance with the divine guidance and instruction he had received while communing with LSD, to assist others in sacramental access to their shared sacrament during this time. His lawsuit reads. Reister's lawsuit said he dispensed sacramental LSD to co-religious via the dark web from September 2022 to May 2024. And he also publishes articles on Substack from May 2021 and June 2022, detailing his beliefs on LSD and Bitcoin, the suit said. Wow.
Yeah. Psychedelic ceremonies on hold in May of 2024 as COVID-19 restrictions eased and access to sacramental grade LSD expanded. Reisler voluntarily stopped all his online distributions and deleted his dark web account, the lawsuit said. But 3 months later, agents from the FBI, Army Criminal Investigations Division, U.S. Postal Service, and other organizations raided Reisler's Springfield, Virginia apartment looking for LSD, trafficking evidence, and the lawsuit said. Reisler's attorney also said this search did not turn up LSD, but agents seized his passport and electronics and ordered him to submit a urinalysis with a CID. Reister is also under indictment in the Southern District of Texas on at least one charge related to fraudulent Bitcoin transfers in which Reister had unwittingly taken part. The suit said. Reister is now on bond in Texas, and his pretrial release conditions prohibit him from using controlled substances such as LSD, which is substantially burdens plaintiff sincere religious exercise, his lawsuit says. The suit also said that after the August 2024 raid on his apartment, that he's been unable to maintain his commitment to his religion and to the military, as his military service contract did not allow him to consume any controlled substance while on active duty.
Yeah, the dark web dealings. Reister's commanding officer ordered him to cooperate with the federal government shortly after the August 2024 raid on his apartment, Lake said. At that point, he was coerced by law enforcement into gathering information on dark web dealers' attempts to sell fake oxycodone pills made with fentanyl, Lake claimed. Reister's dark web account had credits showing it was used to sell LSD, Lake said, which is law enforcement may have felt gave him credibility as he attempted to gather information on fentanyl dealers. Lake said Reister did not participate in sting operations on those dealers, but pried for information on their manufacturing and distribution protocols and suppliers. This wasn't something natural with him, Lake said of Reister's attempts to contact fentanyl dealers on the dark web on behalf of the government. Mr. Reister was actually part of a dark web forums that were full of spiritual seekers using psychedelic substances for religious, spiritual purposes and trying to do safely. That's the community he was a part of. All this other stuff was forced upon him. Lake said Reister cooperated with law enforcement for several months in late 2024, but the operation yielded only perfunctory information. If Reister is convicted of LSD distribution, he could be forced to forfeit property involved in the commission of the alleged crime, including cryptocurrency, a rifle, a shotgun, 2 pistols, magazines, and other than penalties according to the indictment. Wow.
Wow, eh? Going after him for selling LSD to people who were, doing no harm. Just saying. It's not right.
I was thinking this towards reading it while you were reading the end, and I was like, wow, I see Kim and you sitting down with this guy for Open Your Eye and like talking about religious LSD practices and the community and all that. I mean, because I don't know what to say of it because it's kind of like shoot me in the or like a kick me in the ass kind of thing, but like give me a rub on the back, because right now VA's hospitals are looking at psychedelics in the military for healing, and now this guy for his religious practices uses it as well. You can't say yes, say no, and then go and kick a guy in the dick when he's using it for his practices.
Right. And again, who are they harming? LSD isn't going to cause someone to die like fentanyl or, any of those other drugs. They're doing it to actually help their own mental health, because our governments across the world don't seem to want to do that, because we are ruled by, pharmacy land, and, they want us to put faith in that. Well, if these people aren't benefiting from that and they believe that this is helping them spiritually and mentally, then who are they harming? They're not harming anyone, not even themselves.
Right. I fully agree with that. And I can't wait until this guy, even if he does get a dishonorably discharged, that his case gets relooked at if the military embraces psychedelics fully on full.
And I mean, they really should be, because let's face it, our military veterans associations around the world are looking at psychedelics to help treat these service personnel who have severe life-altering issues, especially after coming back from war. So why would they not be looking at it as a possible preventative or current treatment while these personnel are enlisted?
I agree. You researching it in the hospital. I mean, why not?
Right.
It's you have an active military. I mean, I don't know, dude. I mean, it was so what he said he didn't trip while he flew, and they're trying to say that pilot in Alaska, but it affected him for a couple of days. But I mean, who knows? What if he's a better flyer because he's so fucking attuned?
Right. And again, I mean, I think it depends on, how big of a dose you're doing and, what you're treating. And I don't think that LSD should be necessarily banned for pilots. I think that, maybe it should be one of those things that when they're on it, they shouldn't be flying a plane, especially in a high dose. But in a microdose, I can't see it hurting, to be honest. Just saying. Just from my own experience as a patient and consumer of LSD myself in microdoses, it doesn't impair you. You don't even get high on it. So I don't know. Only studies will tell, I guess.
Yeah, if you're using it for medicine, I mean, at small doses, yeah. But hey, find out next week on more stuff on all this cool articles that Bufo has chosen for us. And thank you for joining us here on Psychedelic Reporters and NOK Network, and for tuning in to our video podcast on NOK Network's Rumble and YouTube pages, as well as our social media sites.
That's right, folks. We hope you've enjoyed your update today on mainstream media coverage of psychedelic medicine advancements from around the globe.
Many thanks to our sponsors and to my joint hosts, Tara Simpson, and to Bufo Various for choosing the stories, and to you, our listener, for joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday. Let's hear from Doug Ringer again from Kirkland Lake on our way out.
Woo-hoo-hoo! reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of